What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. This is another storyteller setup kind of video. I've built a Sects and Violets rack up. Right here, it's on screen. We have 10 players. And this is a Vortox game. In one of the previous videos, we looked at the evil twin, and the goal was to find out who the best good twin candidate was for the setup. This time, we are going to be looking at what kind of false information the Vortox will be giving, because the Vortox makes all information false. Then we then need to look at what all of the good players' information they could be getting and what the correct, or some suggestions on what good choices are for false information are. But here's the setup. We've got the Vortox, you've seen him, Clockmaker, Evil Twin, who in this case is going to be paired with the Clockmaker. I won't explain why. I've made a choice, I guess. The Juggler, the Seamstress, the Oracle, the Sage, the Flower Girl, and the Mathematician. Let's start with the Clockmaker. Clockmaker, with no false information, would know that the Vortox is 2 steps away from the Evil Twin. If the Vortox is 2 steps away from the evil twin, what is the actual number of steps that we would give to the evil player? The Clockmaker being the good twin, if the Clockmaker is given a 1, you look at the pair of twins, right, here, here, and then you just kill their neighbors. And then you have a 50% chance of having hit the demon if that was the twin. That was the one that the Clockmaker read. Which is not great, because that would actually kill the demon. I think, in this case, a 3 or a 4 is better. Because if you look at where the Serenovus is sitting, a 4 is actually correct to the Vortox, and a 4 is actually correct to the Evil Twin. So that would make the town think that there's a pair of minions somewhere, and the demon is on the other side of the room. So if there's a pair of minions, like for example, the Vortox is actually the Serenovus, then the correct number of steps is to the other side of the room. And so I think that would be a much more appropriate piece of information to give the Clockmaker. Next up is the Juggler. The easiest way to give false information to the Juggler is just a 0, right? Especially if they juggle themselves 0. But that basically just tells the Juggler that a Vortox is in play. The best way to do it is to really read how many people they do. Common convention is for them to pick a bunch of people based on their claims, and hit maybe 3 or 4 correct, maybe 2 out of them were like actually relevant, and maybe juggle themselves. And you want to kind of hit a number that's close to what the correct answer should be, maybe on the lower end, so that they think that there's good players lying about their claims. Showing 0 just like directly shows they're false. If they juggle themselves and picked a bunch of other people, showing just a 1 means they go, okay, well, at least I'm the juggler. And then everyone else is lying to me. Thanks, guys. Very helpful. But I think it's difficult to make the juggler information tell a particular story here. Next up is the Seamstress. You have 2 options for configuration for the Seamstress. They are either the same or they are not the same. If the Seamstress picks 2 evil players, then they're not on the same team. If the Seamstress picks 2 good players, then they're not on the same team. If the Seamstress picks 2 different players, then yes, they are on the same team. This is only really damaging to the good team if the Seamstress picks 2 good players, because then one of them looks like they are evil. Unless if the Seamstress picks an evil player and a good player, and that evil player is made to look good, they believe them. But otherwise, it's kind of like a nothing information. Like you can use it to try and pick someone and try and trust them, or help 2 people trust each other. So if you went to, because in a game without the Vortox, if you're the Seamstress and you pick someone that says they're on the same team, you tell them and they go, we're on the same team. If they were on the evil team, they knew that already. If they're on the good team, they go, well, I can at least trust you if the Seamstress information is good. In a Vortox game, it's the opposite. You shouldn't trust that person because my information is backwards. I don't know that would be super damaging in this particular setup. So I think that just really any combination of whatever the seamstress gets is fine. Because obviously you can't muck with that, and it's just going to be verifiably exactly correct with the Vortox's false information. Next up is the Oracle. The Oracle information should change if either twin candidate has been killed. You can also, if there's like a sus townsfolk that gets executed, you could maybe bump up the Oracle number. If the Cerenovus gets an execution, you can also bump up the number for that as well, because then that can look like a Cerenovus targeting themselves and getting executed to look like a good player, which could also kind of work. We have the Sage. The Sage is an interesting one. One of the plays that I've done in the past was I was the demon. I was the Fangu. I Fangu past, and then claimed to be the Sage. And with the Sage information, I pointed at the twins. And I go, the only way for this to make sense is the good twin is the Vortox, and the evil twin is a minion, like the Pit Hag or something. Because they obviously can't be minions, because one of them has to be the demon, because this is the Sage information that I got, or something like that. I tried to use that to set that up. In this case, if the Sage activates, you can't show the Vortox in that information. Showing both of the twins would be really interesting, because normally the good team would hunt for the demon first, and then once the demon has been confirmed killed, then they go and get the twins. And then the Sage would basically be saying, okay, look, if my information is correct, we have to go for the twins first, kill one of them, which could potentially incriminate the good twin, and that could be bad for the good team. Otherwise, you also have a lot of freedom here as well, right? Like, you can't show the Vortox, but if the good team is really far behind, you can show a minion. Like, you could show the Cerenovus as one of the options. I would not show the Cerenovus and the evil twin. That's pretty rough. So I think showing one of the twins is really bad. Showing both of the twins is more okay, but probably not great. Showing the other minion is probably fine. Obviously, you can never show the Vortox. Next up is Flower Girl. If everyone votes on the first day on one of the nominations, the Flower Girl will get a no, that a demon did not vote. And if every single person voted, you know it's a Vortox or you're next to an Dash. Like, you know your information has to be wrong because there is a demon in the game. And so that can be a really good Vortox check early on, and they are conveniently sitting next to the Mathematician. If the Mathematician goes, I got a wonky ass number, and the Flower goes, well, either you're the Nadashi or I am Vortox affected. Like, if you and your neighbor both have misinformation, the Nadashi can't get both of you. Like, the Nadashi poisons people one, like a step away from each other. So the Mathematician going, I got a 45. And the Flower goes, well, yeah, there's a Vortox in play because no demon voted for this. So the Flower Girl is the best Vortox detector here. But you can, after knowing it's a Vortox, just invert all of your information. So anyone that didn't vote is a potential demon candidate. And the Flower Girl's information is like still just as powerful, which is why the Flower Girl is a really good active character when it comes to finding demons, especially the Vortox, which is really good. And then the last one is the Mathematician. So the Mathematician is kind of hard because every townsfolk information ability malfunctions. The easiest number you can show them is 0 and be like, nah, man, it's fine. There's no misinformation in the game. But if the Flower Girl does do a confirmation that shows, well, we know there has to be a Vortox or some misinformation, Mathematician can probably just get executed for being an Adachi if they're just like maintaining a 0 the entire time. Because they're like, no, there's no misinformation I trust. It's probably a Fangu game or a Bigger Mortis that hasn't touched a minion yet. Blah, blah, blah. This is fine. You know, and the Flower Girl's like, well, I know I have misinformation. There's no other way for this to be how it is. So giving the Mathematician a a number that is close to what is correct, similar to the juggler. Giving a number close to what is correct is probably best. On the first night, if the seamstress activates, you'll only have 2 pieces of information. On the second night, if the seamstress activates, you'll have the juggler, the seamstress, the oracle, and the flower girl that will all get info. So on the first night, you can't have more than 2 pieces of information checked by the mathematician. So showing a 0 on the first night is fine because the flower girl could not have activated yet. On the second night, after the flower girl is activated, you have up to 4 pieces of information that you can check. And then showing a number in that range that is incorrect but is close to what is correct is probably the best choice. Showing something other than 0, I think, is the best choice here. Showing a 2 and making people think it's an Adachi could be the best, as long as it's still false information. If the flower girl doesn't get all the votes for a Vortox check, pulling a 0 for the mathematician to make the juggler feel like their information is correct could work really well. Like if we pretend the flower girl's not in this game, showing 0s is much more likely. Because there are some characters that will always definitively know that there's a Vortox. The Dreamer is one of them. The Flower Girl is one of them. And depending on what the artist question is, the artist, and depending on Savant information, the Savant. And the Savant will probably take longer to figure it out, but that's one of the ways to look at it. So if the mathematician's information directly clashes with someone that can know for certainty that they're getting misinformation, that's probably not good. And is more likely to make a mathematician look like they're lying and get executed and kind of waste their ability. So you're better off giving them something that leads to there is an amount of misinformation. If you show them an absurdly high number, they're going to go, well, that has to be Vortox. Like, there's no natural way for 7 things to malfunction. And that's not a great choice either. I feel like I would only do that if the evil team is absolutely steamrolling, the good team has no idea that there's a Vortox in play. They just assume all their information is correct, and then it's running down the wrong line. Throwing a really big number to the mathematician would be kind of crazy. But that's kind of it. That's kind of this setup. I guess the other one is the Oracle, right? Like how many good players dying do you need to make them show evil to be a relative number? Because you can't show more than 2. I think you would really only get an opportunity to use that information once. And like the Vortox will only really, like if you're doing information for the Vortox really well, the Vortox will only give you the choice to potentially give false, like really misleading information to the Oracle one time. Because the Oracle, if no evil players are dead, will always have a 1 the first time they get info. And you could potentially bump that up higher and will have to after a minion dies, right? If the number only always changes when a minion dies or the demon dies, the Oracle is still technically getting correct information. It's just a false number. So when they go, okay, my number changed, that means they go, okay, I know the number of alive evil players has changed. And you can mitigate this by when a good player is executed, changing the number. Because it just always has to be wrong, right? So it can be just much higher than it should be. Because if that gap is larger than like just +1, that could be better as far as it comes to being convincingly false information. Clockmaker, like, just look at the game setup. It's always going to be false at one time. Same with the Juggler. It's always going to be false one time. Same with the Seamstress. Same with the Sage. The Flower Girl, depending on who and what voted, but you still don't have any choice in how to make it false, right? But the Mathematician, you have the greatest freedom in how you're going to change the numbers to try and figure out how it's going to fit over a series of days. And you can look at, have they figured out it's a Vortox? Do I need to give you a ridiculous number? Do I need to get, like, throw you a bone? I mean, I guess in theory you could throw up a 45 to the Oracle and be like, what's up? You know there's 45 dead evil players. And they go, it's a Vortox game, or I'm poisoned. But you don't want to do anything so obscenely obvious unless if the good team is falling apart or the good team is just like running in completely the wrong direction. Because you don't want to have a game where there's just all 3 evil players alive at the end and the good team got nothing. They just had no idea. They were completely bamboozled. You want to try and do something to have that climactic final day where it's maybe a minion alive, but the demon and townsfolk for the most part. And then people are trying to finally use their ghost votes to try and close out the game. But that was this setup, and something to give you an idea about how Vortox misinformation is going to look. And I hope this gave you some interesting ideas. Think about what happens in building a setup for sex and violence. Definitely get in that comment section if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions of other setups you want to try, let me know. I am going to be doing a lot of Clocktower content just like this, where I'm looking at setups and talking about different things to help new storytellers get some ideas about what kind of things they need to be thinking about when it comes to building a game.